Welcome back to Let's Talk Race and Ireland. I'm your host, Harrison Paul, and today we're going to talk about Vaughan Gething. He's going to be the first black Prime Minister of Wales and first black Prime Minister of any European country or President of any European country. This is a landmark moment for us. And I just want to for us to break it down and discuss about it and kind of inspire you of how to feel about this moment. So I'm going to play the tape so you guys can see it, and we're going to talk about it.
Vaughan Gething is set to become the next First Minister of Wales after being elected as the new leader of Welsh Labour. He called it an honour to become Europe's first democratically elected black leader and said Wales had turned a page in history. But it was a close race. Mr Gething received 51.7% of the vote, while his opponent, Jeremy Miles, got 48.3%. ITV Wales' political editor, Adrian Masters, was at the announcement in Cardiff.
There are sometimes moments of very big change in politics, and this was one of them. Members of the Welsh Labour Party made their decision. They chose Vaughan Gething to become their leader, and for everyone else here in Wales, he will almost certainly become the next First Minister. Here's how he responded to the announcement.
Today, we turn a page in the book of our nation's history. A history that we write together. Not just because I have the honour of becoming the first black leader in any European country, but because the generational dial has jumped too. Devolution is not something that I have had to get used to, or to adapt to, or to apologise for. Devolution, Welsh solutions to Welsh problems and opportunities, is in my blood.
I say he'll almost certainly become First Minister because there'll be a vote next week in the Welsh Parliament, and the Conservatives and the Welsh Nationalists, Plaid Cymru, are almost certain to vote against him because of their concerns about donations to his campaign and the involvement of the unions. That shouldn't stop Vaughan Gething becoming First Minister, but it will mean a bumpy start to his time at the top.
For me, guys, this is a very special moment, but the main thing that I keep seeing that's coming up on the screen, and I might put some images for you guys to see on the screen, there seems to be an uproar within the community of the great replacement theory, which is a far-right ideology that says that, you know, black people or people of color are actually trying to, replace white people, replace the white race. So they have this huge sense of fear, this huge sense of apprehension, because they're nervous about, of course, us multiplying. There's something that I was shamelessly in a Twitter or TikTok live quite recently, and I thought that I said I might as well have a conversation to see. Sometimes it's nice to pick the brains of white people. So there were a few Irish white people in the conversation. I thought I might as well hop in it, although I'm not much for the arguing. I said I could get something from this conversation in order for me to understand how they're thinking. But one of the things that I came up with and understood and came out with my own revelation, to be honest with you, was I think Europeans are failing to understand, or rather are thinking like children. We are not children. We have to begin to understand that in life, there is consequences to everything. Today is here because of what took place yesterday. There seems to be this spoiled child mentality where they don't want to acknowledge the fact that there was a time in history where you caused a lot of damage to the stabilization of these African nations. Like I said on this page, I speak for African people. And so that's the thing that most concerns me when African people are here in the West, and how we are treated in the West. And today, I was representing a young boy in a school who I feel was, and the family feel was unfairly treated. He, one of the main things of the situation, he had made a wrong move within the interaction with some other boys, but it was a scenario where I felt benefit of the doubt should have been given to him, and teachers failed to give him that. And one of the main things his mother and I were conversating about afterwards, I was kind of saying, listen, of course she was in a place where like, okay, my son may have made a mistake here. And I told her, growing up in Europe, one of the main things, the privileges that white boys, white children get is the benefit of the doubt. And as I've grown up now, I'm realizing how expensive and vital and instrumental that the privilege of having the benefit of the doubt can do to the mind of a human being. When you have the benefit of the doubt, you become more daring. You know, I like to stress the fact that we have people like Boris Johnson who just seem to have 2,000 lives. People like Donald Trump who seem to have 2,000 lives. And we'll put in this on here for you guys to see it, because Donald Trump quite recently said that if he doesn't win the election, that there will be a bloodbath, right? And I want to play this on the screen for you guys to see it, but it's the typical Donald Trump moment. Spoiled if his way doesn't go, and he's giving his people, I spoke about this before, an innuendo. It's an innuendo to say, guys, we will not take rubbish. So I'm going to put it on the screen for you guys to see it.
Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. Now, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it.
One of the things I said in one of my videos, and it's been really, getting at me quite recently, of like the term I use saying black people are forced to live within this very thin air. And one of the things I was saying to this young boy's mother was like, listen, we're going to make mistakes. And I know this boy is a good boy. He's a great boy. Mistakes is a part of life. If you deprive young people and people in general the opportunity to make mistakes, I'll give you another thing. Frank Hester made a mistake about, made a comment about Diane Abbott. Now, one of the things I didn't stress in my last episode was he didn't actually apologize for being racist. He said, sorry for being rude. Again, that's another innuendo that we have to be mindful of. But guess what? The whole country said, wrap it up, that's it, close it off, a sorry was given. No matter how lousy the sorry, no matter if we can read through the lack of accountability, that does not matter. And follow me where I'm going to this with this, guys, because this is going to get quite deep today. And I was having another conversation with someone quite recently, and they were talking about the brokenness within Africa. And we always have this, I always have this debate with Africans about, is it the leaders? Is it the system? Is it your Western, is it the West, Western powers? What is it? And I come to the place where I'm saying two things are slightly true. There is a brokenness within the African community. That brokenness comes from a lack of the benefit of the doubt. That brokenness comes from an oppression. That brokenness comes from you live life, quote unquote, on the edge. It doesn't take, you're walking on eggshells. It's easy, there's a narrative about you. And one of my prior episodes, I spoke about, I mentioned Robert Mugabe, and one of the things I didn't point out, and I put it up on the screen while I'm talking so you guys can see it. If you watch Robert Mugabe's body language, he's actually very afraid and intimidated. This guy is now the president of a country, and he's very afraid, intimidated. And one of the things I was so proud of this black man here today, when we talk about Vaughan, is that he said, not apologetic Because this now is the stage of the fight we are in. This is the breaking point we are in. Is, yes, you are free, but are you free with an ankle monitor? That is the breaking point. I was also talking to another brother, very successful man, businesses and everything that's happening. And even with his success, he understood, yeah, there are places in certain high places where you kind of got to accept the dynamics of those places, AKA white people dominate, and it's very unlikely they will allow a black man to dominate in those spaces. This is a very successful man. Owns business. We're having a great conversation. And I feel, and this is probably how Martin Luther felt, I understand we are no longer in chains or in slavery. But guys, I have a dream that we can vote. And it probably felt so ludicrous to the people onlooking that they're like, Malcolm, what do you mean we can vote? And can you imagine, and I'm going to put this interview on the screen because it's one of my favorite interviews. Watch this.
But in recent years, I've come to see that these are often the people who stand in the way of progress because they are committed only in a lukewarm manner. And every time you move to try to solve the problem, they will respond by saying, you're moving too fast, you ought to cool off, you should put on brakes. And they end up more devoted to order than to justice, and are more devoted to maintaining a sort of negative peace, which is merely the absence of tension, than gaining a positive peace, which is the presence of justice.
What gets me is that Martin Luther King, in such times, dire times, to us in hindsight, it looks like, straightforward. He still had people still had people he was arguing with about moderacy. And he was trying to explain moderacy kills progression. The moderates kill progression. Can you imagine in Jim Crow? People are still trying to be moderate. I want you to understand, brothers and sisters, the one who feel like, we got a lot of privileges now. There is still a disparity and an injustice that's going on to me that I cannot unsee. That I cannot unsee. That benefit of the doubt in the workplace for like a young boy who are represented in school, in the world systems and the world organizations, when we talk about IMF, EU, UN, African nations are bullied in those places. It's so frustrating to me that the majority of people are okay with accepting the fact that Palestine are being bullied by Israel, and then the world organizations we are depending on to have a moral judgment, a high moral judgment, is failing. Or rather, I don't like to use the term failing because they're not even trying. It's their agenda as well. It's a joint agenda. And why is it that when we try to teach this when it comes to Africa, we are told, oh no, it's because you're corruption. So we understand these type of people can be corrupt, but all of a sudden you don't want to carry that belief into Africans. This is what I'm talking about by the breaking of the spirit. Like I told you, I was having a debate with that person about, is it the leaders? Is it the West? Is it whatever? The spirit of the African is broken because of this, because of that. Think about that. I want you to think about it in a term of an abusive relationship. A woman is such in a corrosive relationship that whenever she's done wrong, she's gaslit because someone is trying to find her constantly as the one who was in the wrong. When an African is forced to live in this thin air, due to the narratives that the oppressor has set, due to the claustrophobic room that was set for the black man. It causes somebody to lose self-belief, to lose self-dignity. You are not living if your life, it has to be lived in a very tight, and here's the point, a very tight space, and here's the point I'm going to give you. We are now watching white society, or should I say the right wing, anybody on the right, whether far right or just right, which I see is majority the white man, frustrated that he has to now live life in rules. Follow me. So they're calling it wokeism. Because you have to be mindful of someone else, of what you say. That has been the life of black people since the beginning. We understood what you like. We had to watch what you like, what you don't. Because if you make the wrong move, Negro, you are quick to be put in the NIGGE box. And you're put in there. I watched a great video of Akala, where Piers Morgan was asking about the disparity between black kids and white, and goes, listen, you are never called upon to speak on behalf of the fact that white middle-aged men are majority of them are more times predominantly the ones committing acts of pedophilia. But you're not called upon to speak on that. And then now, the athlete, the doctor, from the top to the bottom, it's perceived as if any black person is at risk of committing such a crime. So now, it's painted on every black person, whether successful or not, that you are just as much as risk as a 15-year-old London boy on the street as committing those kind of crimes. If you make any human being live in such a claustrophobic space, you are bound to get a broken spirit. So when we think about the corruption within Africa that goes on, the Western powers, majority of the work is being done for them. Because when I look at a leader like the Rwandan leader, I see a man who is emasculated. They don't want a powerful black leader. I do not believe there is a powerful black leader. One of the main things the Americans are saying they want Trump instead of Biden because they say you cannot bully Trump. I don't even think Africans are desiring that or understanding that is what we should be desiring from an African leader. Someone that when we see him having conversations with Western powers, he looks like he's the more dominant force in that room. This is a level of consciousness Africans are not understanding. So when I was fighting today, although the young boy, brother, had made some mistakes, what we're fighting, I'm fighting against that tight space where we cannot be given the benefit of the doubt. And in this case especially, he was provoked. But it's never taken into account whether that you were provoked or not. I hope you're following me today and realizing the tight space of black men. So we ask ourselves, then what kind of confidence, how does a person stand tall, live tall? And please, I don't want black people in here who come to you about your individuality, about the fact, no, I'm confident, I'm this. We're talking on a macro scale, the state of the African. What oppression and years and 500, almost 600 years of oppression has done to the African. We are now in a state where we don't even know what standing tall really looks like. Where I have a conversation with someone and say, but well, what about this? What about standing tall in this kind of place? Oh, well, that's not our portion. You should know, surely, like we shouldn't expect to be able to stand tall in that environment or that scenario or that situation. But the white man will continue to beat us every time. That is from our leaders to people on the ground. Because he is raised with that air. He's not raised with air. And my evidence is that now that this new wokeism is happening, he does not know how, he does not like that life. But guess what, Mr. White Man? That has been our life. Oh, don't do this, you're going to be a criminal. Oh, don't do this, you're going to be known as an I don't know if I can say these words, rapist. Oh, don't do that. Oh, don't do this. So now you parents are beating black children. Walk in the line. Because you know it doesn't take much for you to be put in the NIGGE or box. It doesn't take much. You are right around the corner from it, no matter how hard you worked. Like Akala said, I'll actually put up on the screen for you guys to see it.
See, we have enough trouble getting what I'm going to call the racial virtue signaling right-wing press to call white supremacists terrorists by their proper name, let alone to force all white people to explain the bad actions of all other white people. For example, you will never be called upon to explain that not all middle-aged white men are paedophiles, despite the fact that hundreds, maybe thousands of them are convicted of sex offences every year, because it's self-evident that not all middle-aged white men are paedophiles.
I think it's a completely valid point, I do.
Let's look at it in the other sense. Where young black boys overachieve, is race offered as an explanatory factor? For example, British, Ghanaian and Nigerian boys on free school meals, so the poorest sector, academically outperform and are more likely to go to university than similarly poor white, mixed race and black English kids whose grandparents came from the Caribbean. The 4 youngest children in Britain to ever take GCSEs are all black. Romari Wilfred, a young black boy from East London, has a higher IQ than Einstein. Young black men are more disproportionately represented in professional football than any other area of British life, with all of the consequences and implications that has for their contribution to the tax base, etc. So it's almost as if a black person does something negative, the entire so-called black community is to blame. Black person does something positive and they suddenly regain their humanity and their right to be viewed as an individual.
It does not take much for you to be put in that box. Yet he is not put in the box of pedophile. He doesn't have to represent every other middle-aged man who's ever committed those things, those sorts of crimes. So when we talk about the new prime minister, and we talk about history, and we talk about the fact we are now in a new stage in this fight, Europeans are failing to understand that now we are here and we deserve to sit in certain places. They think we're being chosen because of our color. I'll have you know, we have worked hard for positions and never got them because of our color. But why that is unfair and why you have to be okay, Negro, in this new season with demanding more is because we have to be mature and understand history created today. That's not to mention neocolonialism. Neocolonialism is still taking place. But if we start at history, history created today. So don't you fall into the trap of the people who have a great excuse when it comes to the ideology of the great replacement. Of, listen, this is our country at the end of the day. We can see that you people are very good at protesting. What you need to do is protest to your leaders. Whatever we have done in the past and in the present to the nation of Africa, we need to rectify it. But the problem is that you were raised to be spoiled. So you don't know what it means to rectify. You just know what it means to receive. And I just don't want the African, like I was saying to that young boy's mother today, that we still remain in this space where we know, listen, we're second-class citizens. Because this is the hour. This is the hour our forefathers definitely, I know in my heart, dreamt of. Not for us to park it here, but for us to have the exact same privileges to become a prime minister, to have the benefit of the doubt. So when we talk about the ideology of the Negro, How he will go now into those linear places is what he just said there. The new Prime Minister of Wales. I am unapologetic. We need a new sense of we need to harden in these moments, because someone will successfully guilt trip you and say, what more could you ask for? But like I made a reference to Martin Luther King, they were probably looking at him crazy, like, what more could you ask for? You're no longer a slave. But because of history, brothers and sisters, where we are is not enough. We deserve the same likelihood of making it to prime minister as a white boy. And how we create that atmosphere is in these nuanced moments within the European countries, where I can be so sure a white woman would have gone in there today and defended her son and said, my son was bullied and pressed into that corner, and I want that to be taken into consideration. And she would have been having none of it. That mentality, that's a taker, where you take the high road, it has to go in this final hour, brothers and sisters, if we are going to get what our forefathers died for us to receive in this final hour. That compromise, well, at the end of the day, it isn't our home. No, don't be immature. It is our home because of history. I can think of my son tossing his toys up and crying without any true understanding of why I'm telling him it's time to go to bed, or why I'm telling him he can no longer play with his toys. And you're tossing it up, and you're saying, this is happening to us, that's happening to us. No. But in the same token, they love to attach themselves to their forefathers. But now when it's time to attach themselves to the other negative sides of what their forefathers done, all of a sudden they want to be void of any responsibility. When your great forefathers, who you have statues up all across your countries, failed to stop their acts and to retract, they were creating today. They were shaping today. And my brothers and sisters, you have to be mindful of this. It's not for you to come here now and kind of think, oh, listen, I have one biscuit on my plate. Or I have two biscuits. I used to have none or a few. I used to have none on my plate. Now I have 1.5 biscuits. You are being irresponsible. And another things I said, and I'll sign off here, that I said to her, I think black people fail to understand that we can look at our situation in an individual state, but when you look at it on a macro scale, we are the children of our ancestors. And every individual African who is put in a situation, they have to understand that they are making a stamp on behalf of our ancestors, on behalf of our historical timeline. Meaning, when you are having a situation with your work, someone in Ireland, an individual in Ireland, or an individual here where I'm living, or an individual in any place, you have to understand you have a responsibility to make a new mark to say we are no longer there. I'm black, you're white. We are no longer in the dynamic we once were. I am now putting the marker for a new place on behalf of not just me and my situation, not just me and my child, not just me and my job, on behalf of black people. You have to now know we are at a new stage. Because that white person walks away. And I will say this, not to brag, but I was so happy. And the teacher, I think the headmaster said to me, thank you for coming. They needed you in here today. Because I think he understood that this case wouldn't have been made in his defense had you not had been here. And I don't think we would have found ourselves thinking in that manner or in that thought process had you not brought it up. But we now have to, I have now set a new standard for black people. And we, the family, has set a new standard for black people that you better start learning to give a black boy the benefit of the doubt. The same way. You better now start learning not to be quick to throw a black boy in the NIGGE or a box. On the dangerous black boy. But you better start learning to give him the same benefit of the doubt you give a blonde hair and blue eyes. It's time now that people, we are now in 2024. It's time to shift the mentality where someone allows refugees from Ukraine to come in. And it feels different to when a refugee from Somalia comes in. We are now in 2024. And we have to push that needle. They're not going to do that work. That benefit of the doubt is not going to be something they're going to do at their own will. We have to push that needle. So congratulations to Vaughan, Prime Minister Vaughan Gething. A huge moment in time, and this is what I'm fighting for in Europe. It is high time we got into these places and we were unapologetic in these places. And when this mentality starts to indoctrinate our people with this mentality, I can tell you that even the issues within Africa will be fixed. Because what that comes with is a newfound and a new level of dignity. A new level of dignity. And what's going to happen over time is the white man's going to understand that they're not willing to go below that level of dignity. They're not willing to accept that there's certain rooms that they're not allowed to dominate in. They're not willing to accept that we're quick to throw them in that box. And that they should have got a benefit of the doubt in certain situations. In the workplace, in schools. So we now have to move at their tone. But we have to show that we're not budging. And black people all across the countries are budging. Are saying, I'm going to be grateful I'm not a slave anymore. And lastly, we have to unite. Because they're going to try make young or black people all around fray from saying, hey, what, you're overstepping now. And we need to unite as black people so they know if you touch one of them black people in Europe, a legion may come after you. That is why America has risen to the place that they are. Because they learned that you touch one black person, a legion may be coming. Thank you so much for watching.
And I'm on a mission for you.